This is the Real Christian Manliness Podcast with Isaac and Tim Ingram. Let's get manly. Hey Tim, how's it going today?
Great. How's everything in Montana?
It is fairly warm, sunny, and I am not working for another 3 weeks, so that's always good.
Lucky.
Well, technically I'm working in a week, but it's kind of a side gig. It's not my main job. But where I work, we're off for the next 3 weeks in between cycles where I work.
Well, that's good.
What about you?
It rained today in June in Texas, which is always a welcome sight. Tomorrow it's probably going to be really, really humid.
Yep, that's how it goes.
Yeah.
So, anywho, all right. Well, let's go ahead and roll right into our topic today. Our topic is on the theme of real Christian manliness, the manliness of Jesus. So I figured that was actually your idea, Tim, wasn't it?
If it's a good one, I'll take credit for it.
Well, I think with Jesus, it's always safe to say that it's a good topic.
Yeah, indeed.
Yep. So, yeah, I think that's a really good spot to start about manliness, because I think true manliness was exemplified by Jesus in his earthly ministry, being, as a lot of preachers and teachers and all those type of people like to say, he's 100% God, but also 100% man, all in one person. So, I went over this a couple different ways in my head, and I kind of feel bad about using a human quote to kick it off, but I really like the quote, and it's by Winston Churchill. It says that courage is rightly esteemed the first of human qualities because it has been said it is the quality which guarantees all others. And I think Jesus was a very courageous man in that he stepped out of his comfort zone and came down to earth and took on all the different attributes of a man in his godly person. And so I think courage is a huge part of manliness in general, and I think that's exemplified by Jesus. And so courage, the way I see Jesus portraying it in a lot of ways, I think men and a lot of times good men are known to be strong, silent types, and I think he was very courageous in his silence. He didn't have to be all up in people's business all the time. He was very strong in his, and this is illustrated in the time whenever he was stood up for the woman taken in adultery.
Right.
Everyone was, wanting to cast stones and all this stuff, and they were, getting on to Jesus for taking up for her, and all he did was write something in the sand and basically walk away. And he did say, "He that is without sin cast the first stone," but those were few words for all the words that were coming at him, wouldn't you say?
Well, yeah, also you can think of the scriptures that talk about how he was led to the slaughter like a lamb, a dumb lamb. I'm not quoting it exactly, but he basically did what he had to do, and he didn't gripe and complain, and he just put his head down and got the job done that needed to be done. And thankfully he did, or else we'd all be lost right now.
True, that's true. And also he was silent whenever he was standing before the high priest, and they were asking an answer of him, and there was all these different witnesses that were testifying against him, and they weren't agreeing, and he could have walked right into all different kinds of traps, but he just shut his own trap shut, so to speak.
When he was tempted by Satan in the wilderness, there's all kinds of examples that you can go through. I think you could probably write a book on all the examples of the traits. If you just went through the Gospels and read the story of Jesus, you could just sit down and develop this out to probably endless possibilities, and you would see all these manly attributes and characteristics of him if you went through and did that.
Mm-hmm. And I think that on the opposite side of the coin, a trait of immaturity is just talking way too much. Yeah.
Yeah.
I deal with kids all the time at work, and they get themselves in more trouble just by talking. It's not by doing stupid stuff. It's by talking and then being corrected and then talking back and then being corrected for talking back, and it's just a vicious cycle where it escalates and then they get in big trouble. So I think that's a huge trait of immaturity and the opposite of manliness, of just running your mouth more than you need to.
Whenever you said that, I think of a story. Whenever I was a senior in high school, we were on a junior-senior trip, and it was me and my youth pastor and two of my friends in a car outside of D.C. We're on our way to a church service on a Wednesday night, and my two friends were just yapping and yapping and yapping. And I would say something every once in a while, and finally my youth pastor just says, "Guys, have you noticed that the oldest person in the car is the one that's not talking at all?" And they didn't quite get what he was doing, and I had to explain it to him. He's saying that because you're young and immature, you just you don't know how to shut your mouth.
Yeah, that's so true, and it's great to have an example in other men. And some of the best men I know aren't that talkative either. They're just the strong, silent type, and they just sit back and they listen. And I think that's a trait that's that Jesus has, is that he's a strong, silent type. He spares his words, and at least he did in his earthly ministry. So another thing that comes to mind when you think of manliness and things that Jesus exemplified was his strength, and this can be broken down into several different attributes and different ways underneath strength. But the most obvious of manly qualities is a physical strength. And if you know anything about Jesus, is that he's the son of a carpenter, Joseph. And so carpentry, and especially before power tools and a lot of modern things, was a very labor-intensive trade to be involved in. And so I imagine Jesus was right in there through his teenage years and all this stuff, working with his father, his earthly father, being a carpenter. And I'm not one that has done a lot of manual labor. I've worked in warehouses and stuff, but woodworking and carpentry is definitely, and construction, I imagine, is a very, very, very physical trade. So I think that's a huge part. And another thing, I was looking up some things about the physical aspect and the physical strength of Jesus, and just imagine his earthly ministry. They didn't have cars or any type of transportation other than their 2 feet. And so I was looking it up, and I saw estimates anywhere from 2,000 to almost 3,500 miles that Jesus walked in his 3-year ministry. And that's just incredible to think about that, don't you think?
Yeah, we had a guest evangelist at our church yesterday, and he was talking about baptism and how many excuses people have about not getting baptized. And he just think about this. Jesus Christ, the Son of God, walked 70 miles just to get baptized.
It's raining a little today. I don't think I'll go to church to get baptized.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm afraid of the water.
But I'm just thinking about it. I've been doing a lot of running lately, and running 6 or 8 miles at a time is it's way too much. But to think that in 3 years you walked, 2,000 to 3,000 miles is just ridiculous.
Well, I heard a preacher that I was listening to some stuff this week, and he said that he believes that God created men to be tired, and it was amazing. And he said he was just talking about how you go to work and you work all day to provide for your family, and then you have to come home and you have to take care of your family and your wife, and you have to do all these things. And he said, but that's the times whenever you're tired that you rely more on God than yourself. And he said he believed that we were created to be tired, and being tired it's kind of it's after you've shown strength and going through all those struggles and trials of your day, and it's a manly aspect to be tired because he said that men nowadays, if you want to call them that, or most of them were probably more like boys, they just go to bed with too much energy, and it was just an interesting topic that he was going over.
Yeah, I mean it's true because there's things that say about in our weakness he's made strong, and if we have the answers and we have the strength for everything, then that doesn't give God much of an opportunity to really work in our life. So that makes a lot of sense. Another thing where he was physically strong was being out in the wilderness. You think of him being just whenever he was tempted, but just being out in the wilderness and living off the land and dealing with all the weather and the desert and the animals and things like that, is just a characteristic. You think of a manly man's one that's a hunter and a outdoorsman and all that stuff. So I think that's another area where his physical strength was exemplified.
Not just the physical strength, the emotional strength, and the spiritual strength that he showed. And I mean, they talk about strength being actually being able to control yourself, to control things, and and truly strong people help weak people, and he really demonstrated that and showed us examples of that all throughout his ministry.
Yeah, and actually the next thing I've got on my list is self-control under strength, power over yourself. Where I work, one of the things he'll say all the time to the kids we work with is that the hardest punch is the one that you don't throw. Says, the one that you don't throw is the hardest one. It's easy to get into a fight, and you think that you're strong if you get into fights, but the hardest thing is to keep yourself from getting into fights, especially when you come from, different backgrounds and stuff. But, going to the wilderness aspect, the temptation, Satan tempted him in, several different ways. And in the flesh, you definitely it would be easy to fall into those traps, all this land would be yours and, just prove that God has your back and just jump off of this tower and just all these different things. And Satan was laying out the easy way out, but him and his self-control, he took the right way and the way that required the self-control.
Well, in a lot of ways, Satan tempted him with what you might call the worldly aspects of manhood. Mm-hmm. And the world tells you that you have to have power and prestige and accomplishments to be a man, and you have to be strong. And society looks at fighters as strong, and all these different ways, and thinks of people that have lots of women as man. And he tempted him with all these things, and that self-control was the godly manhood that he showed us. And the example that he gave us there, it was the contrast against what the world's version of manhood is.
Yeah, that's true. And self-control is definitely something that is rare in a lot of men these days, and especially with all the different vices that are available at the touch of a fingertip. Whether it's the culture of going out and partying, or the women, and whether that's real women or women on a screen, just there's the availability. There's tons of temptation out there, and so self-control is kind of a rare trait in a lot of ways, and so it's good to have that example in Jesus. Another area of self-control that I thought of was his self-control in suffering. Whenever he was being beaten and mocked and all these different things, they would taunt him to do different things. Whether it was blindfolding him and punching him and saying, "Who, if you're really God, then just tell us who punched you or who spat on you," or whatever it was. He was strong even in a tortured state, and And I think one of the closest things to that is whenever you have people getting tortured in times of war, soldiers and SEALs and stuff that are getting interrogated and waterboarded and all these different forms of torture, that there's a huge amount of self-control that's necessary to hold your ground whenever you're being physically and psychologically tortured and poked and prodded. And I think that's very, very much the way that Jesus was. He stood his ground, and he did what he came to do, and just suffered through all those different things for what he knew he was supposed to do.
Yeah, that's a good point.
And these days men are so soft that they don't know how to deal with adversity, physical and emotional adversity, and they have to punch out every once, just clock out and go away just to get away from everything, when that's just kind of a luxury. Men are so soft they have to have special oils for their beards so their beards aren't too rough.
Hey, you don't want to get the beard crowd mad at you.
Hey, beard crowd, we're not poking fun at you. We're just making a point.
Jesus had a beard.
He did. I don't know if he used essential beard oils.
You think he curled it up with a little fancy tip at the end, like some guys do that? Jesus wasn't a hipster.
I don't think so either. I've never seen thick black rim glasses on Jesus. So, anyway, one of the attributes that came up to me whenever I thought of manliness was Jesus in his teaching ministry. I think a real man is a teacher, and especially, having Father's Day yesterday at the time of our recording today, you think of manliness and fatherhood. You don't really think of Jesus as a father figure because he was the son in the grand scheme of things, but he was very fatherly in the way that he taught. He would sit down multitudes of people and just teach them on deep subjects, and he would teach his disciples, and even when the disciples were trying to keep the children away, he said, let the children come unto me, because of such is the kingdom of heaven. And so I think a very manly trait is that of teaching. I think a man really wants to pass on to the next generation important things and important traits and important things that the man has learned throughout his life to the next generation.
Well, it's even more than that. It's commanded in Scripture for the fathers to teach they're the ones given the responsibility to teach and nurture and bring up their children in the right way. And I think any man that's a real man, a real Christian man, wants to help, and he wants to teach, and he wants to edify, and he just wants to do anything he can to help those below him, whether he's a father or if he's just younger people around him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and one thing that he did very well, I believe, was teaching, putting it on the bottom shelf in a lot of ways. He wasn't one to go into these deep philosophical things. When you think of the Beatitudes and things, you got blessed are the poor in spirit, blessed are the meek, blessed are the pure in heart. All those different things were just very almost bullet point type things that were easily digested and consumed. And that's kind of what you have to do when you're teaching the next generation. You have to kind of simplify it so that it's easy to understand, and they can, just run it through their brain and convert it into long-term knowledge. And so I think Jesus was very effective in doing that.
I think part of the crisis that is in the world today is the lack of, you go to a large percentage of Sunday school classes are taught by ladies. Mm-hmm. Whenever, and not that there's anything wrong with that. The problem is that there's not enough guys that are real men that'll step up and teach those classes and will help and train the children in the way they should go.
Yep, and this past Saturday we graduated a group of kids from our program, and for those of you that don't know, I work at a program where we have 16 to 18-year-old kids in kind of a boot camp type situation. A lot of them, not all of them, but a lot of them come from pretty difficult backgrounds. And so multiple times this same kid during the past 5.5 months came up to myself and some of my coworkers and said that this is the most interaction I've ever had with an adult man in my entire life. And I think it was 17. And, that really hits you hard when you think that there hasn't been male influence in his life more than, a few months at a time, and so that's a huge deficit in today's society with masculine role models that teach and portray and exemplify masculine traits, And you're exactly right. That's a huge, huge disadvantage that this generation and some of these more recent generations have and are having to go through.
Yeah, it's a more recent, more modern state of living to where kids are left to hang out with other kids, but for the majority of their time, men are off working, trying to provide their family, which is admirable. And a lot of times they get tired and they come home and they don't have the energy that they would want to take care of their kids and hang out. And I think Jesus picked up a lot of his attributes from being in the carpenter shop with his dad, and whenever they lost him, whenever they couldn't find him, where he was at, he was in the temple with the men and teaching it and conversing with them. So it's more of a modern phenomena where the children are taken care of by mainly women, and whenever they're not there, they're hanging out with other kids. And biblically speaking, kids, the younger you are, the more foolish you are, and you're not going to get more wisdom. You're not going to get more manly traits by hanging around the people your same age. I look back at a lot of the influence that I've had in my life for positive and for good things was whenever I was hanging around guys that were 15, 20, 30 years older than me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and one thing that I've personally tried to do is have some friends that are a lot older than me. I've got two really good friends that are old enough to be, my dad. And I don't know if that was always deliberate, but as time has gone on, I've always tried to keep those friendships alive with men that are old, a lot older than me, and so you kind of automatically get that wisdom by talking and hanging out with them. And so, going down, the last thing I've got written down is a trait that you might not think to be extremely manly, but that trait is love. And, you think of Christ's ministry, it was all out of love. He came down to live among us and to be around us and to ultimately give his life up for us. That was all motivated by love, by duty, because that's, the job he came down and was sent by his Father, but love is a huge manly trait. And I think that whenever a man or a father is a good father is because he loves his wife and he loves his kids. And he's not doing it necessarily out of duty, but he's doing it out of love for that child, because he knows that child needs that influence and he needs to have that example of manliness. And, and it's not just manliness for the sons, but even the daughters, because it may not be teaching a daughter how to use a reciprocal saw or how to, change the oil in a car, but it's just an example of what a real man looks like so that she knows what to look for a man in her own life. But I think all of that, all those different things are motivated by love. And when you think what Jesus did for us and what the Bible says about greater love hath no man than this, than that a man lay down his life for his friend, that was one of the biggest traits that Jesus had, was that of love. And I think it's a very manly trait.
Absolutely it is. It's not a worldly manliness trait, but for a Christian man, love plays a big part of it, and especially you break it down, Christian is Christ-like, and God is love. Jesus is love, and if you're going to be a Christian man, you got to get love in there.
Yeah, and I think a lot of this is just self-explanatory, but I don't think we should have gone without saying anything about love because it's just huge, and I think that the difference between a good father and a good husband and a good man, and then a very dutiful man, a responsible man, but most of us know a man that's just a good, strong man, but he's just hard or harsh or mean might be a word that would describe him. But I think that's just a very strong man that lacks the attribute of love. And I think it's very important not to forget that as a man. And that's not just for fathers and husbands, but even as single men. It's very important not to get too sidetracked with being a macho man or what have you, but to be a very compassionate towards others, one that gives back and one that volunteers time and does all these things, and that will kind of carry through once that single man becomes a husband and then becomes a father and all those different things.
Yeah, definitely. Can I mention a few other things that I came up with and thought about?
Yeah, go ahead.
While preparing for this,
be my guest.
A few things. We're talking about being a Christian man, and so the pattern is Jesus, and we're talking about his attributes and his manly characteristics, and Jesus spoke truth, and he is truth. So I think that real Christian men are truthful. Their word means something, and that's something that we should be going after. And also, the Bible tells us we're to be holy as he was holy, and that's another. I think real Christian men are holy men, and that's another thing there's another area that separates manliness, worldly manliness, from Christian manliness, which is kind of the goal of what we're going for here on this podcast.
Yeah, you're absolutely right when it comes to that truthfulness and things of that nature. I mean, whenever you think of some of the things he did say, whenever he spake, there are some very blistering and very pointed things that he said. Whenever he was talking to the Pharisees, woe unto you, scribes and
Vipers.
Pharisees, hypocrites. You devour widows' houses and make pretense for. It's like he just laid it out, saying you're just a bunch of empty people that are vain and just doing it for your own selves. But
whited sepulcher.
Yeah, he wasn't afraid to tell the truth. It's like, how can you escape the damnation of hell? Those type things.
Yeah.
He's very frank, very pointed.
No, his name was Jesus. It wasn't Frank.
It was Jesus. But Jesus was very frank.
Yes. So if your name is Frank, you want to be more like Jesus. Or you got to step up on the rest of us.
Oh, yeah. You can both be Frank and be named Frank.
And eat a Frank.
Or a bratwurst. I like bratwurst.
Yeah, meat is good.
It is. I think that's a very manly trait, is being a carnivore.
So you're saying vegetarians aren't manly?
No, I didn't say they weren't manly. I just said that being a carnivore is a very manly trait. So that's all I'm saying, for if there's any bearded hipsters that are also vegetarians or vegans.
But if you're a Christian, we love you.
Yes. And if you're non-Christian, we love you too.
Yeah, we do too.
So, anyway, I think that's a very, not comprehensive, but it's a good list of things that every man should try to incorporate into their life. And one thing I think that podcast listeners in general are they're very intentional. It's easy to put music and just drone away the time listening to music, which is fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But whenever I came to a point to where I was just listening to a lot of music, it kind of became boring, and I was like, I need to get something into my head that's profitable, something that that I can improve myself on. And the fact that you're listening to this is a very self-aware thing that you're doing, trying to become a better Christian man. And so we just hope that we can give you some type of meat to eat as far as being a manly Christian. And so take this list and, think over it and try to find practical ways you can apply it into your life, and hopefully that you'll become a better Christian and a better man for it. So we appreciate you listening in today for our first episode, and stay tuned for our next episode coming out next week.
Bye-bye.